Hi everyone, welcome to see this video. I'm Julie, an exchange student from China, studying in secondary teaching of mathematics. Flipped learning is increasingly popular in both Australian and Chinese mathematics classrooms. Yet students often struggle with self-regulation and consistent engagement, while teachers must balance curriculum demands with interactivity. Therefore, I chose 4 studies on this topic. I hope it will guide my academic research and future teaching. The first study adopted a pragmatic mixed methods paradigm following an explanatory sequential design. The participants were one grade 10 extended mathematics class and their teacher from an Australian secondary school. It's important to note that this was an elective class with highly motivated students, and the teacher voluntarily implemented the flipped model. The study addressed 2 main research questions. First, how do teachers implement flipped learning within a standardized curriculum? And the second, how do both teachers and students perceive this instructional approach? To answer this question, surveys provided numerical evidence of attitudes, while interviews captured emotional and motivational dimensions. This combination was particularly appropriate because flipped learning involves both structural and affective aspects. The findings shows that most students felt more motivated and engaged in flipped learning, and it significantly enhanced the students' competence. The mixed method design offered complementary add value. The qualitative interviews helped explain quantitative trends and revealed emotional nuances that numbers alone couldn't capture. As for limitations, since the participants were highly motivated and the teacher was very proactive, the findings have limited generalizability, highlighting the need to test flipped learning in compulsory, lower motivation classrooms. Finally, the practical implications are quite valuable. Through this experiment, schools can test the flipped classroom method in high ability classes to promote students' autonomous learning and learning engagement. As the study suggests that flipped classroom could enhance the engagement of high motivation students and teachers. However, this method also requires the participation of teachers who are enthusiastic about flipped classroom in the teaching process. The second study followed a social constructivist mixed methods approach grounded in self-determination theory. The participants were 27 male senior students who were in high-risk examination situations, together with their mathematics teacher. According to Daisy and Ryan, SDD explains how autonomy, competence, and relatedness shape intrinsic motivation, which provides a strong foundation for investigation, students' engagement in flipped classrooms. The central research question asked how can a teacher implement flipped learning in a senior mathematics class to support students' motivation and engagement. How do students perceive the changes in autonomy, competence, and teacher-student relationships within this learning model? Data were gathered through questionnaires, classroom observations, and focus group interviews conducted over an extended period, ensuring contextual authenticity and a rich understanding of classroom dynamics. The findings report that in high-risk examination situations, flipped learning can help improve students' competence and autonomy. Also, teachers play a crucial role in flipped classrooms. In terms of strengths, this study grounded in SDT, ensuring strong theoretical alignment and interpretive depth, followed a clear sequence of qualitative integration, enhancing the reliability of this research and the consistency of interpretation. However, due to the small all-male sample and the absence of objective achievement data limit the generalizability of the results, reducing the credibility of findings on how motivation translates into real achievement outcomes. It is recommended that teachers proactively establish supportive relationships in practice, because research indicates that when teachers foster an atmosphere of trust and support, students are more likely to engage. But teachers should also balance individualized feedback with group encouragement to ensure sustainability and fairness in everyday teaching. The third study used a positivist quantitative research paradigm with a quasi-experimental design. There were two classes of students participated in this experiment, as the experimental group and the control group. The experimental group was taught using the SRFC model, while the control group experienced a traditional flipped classroom. Importantly, both groups were taught by the same teacher, using identical materials and class durations, which ensured strong internal validity and minimized confounding variables. The research question as shown on the screen. To explore this, the study employed quantitative instruments such as achievement tests, self-efficiency questionnaires, and learning logs. The findings showed that the experimental group significantly outperformed the control group in academic achievement, self-regulation ability, and study planning skills. Also, with the experimental system, students developed a reflection cycle. Rigorous statistical experiments and analyses were conducted in this study. This not only ensures the stable of experimental measurement, but also endures the research with strong higher explanatory power and robust statistical inferential validity. However, a key limitation was the age group restrictions. Finally, the study highlights that integrating self-regulated learning principles into flipped classrooms can be enhancing students' engagement and independent learning ability. It's recommended that teachers provide students with platforms for self-assessment when implementing flipped classrooms, and be mindful to provide students with space for independent learning while offering guidance and interventions at appropriate times. The last study adopted a social constructivist qualitative research paradigm, aiming to exploring how flipped learning influences student engagement in secondary mathematics classrooms. The participants were 35 students and their mathematics teacher from a secondary school in Turkey, and it was grounded in the 4 pillars of flipped framework. The study was guided by 2 research questions. To address these questions, the researchers used a multi-source qualitative design that combined observation, interviews, and diaries. It was analyzed by Friedrich's 3-dimensional engagement model. The findings showed that flipped learning significantly enhanced students' behavioral engagement, emotional engagement, and cognitive engagement. In terms of strengths, the study adopted a design of phrased before and after comparison with the same teacher and the same class, controlled the interference of individual differences between teachers and students, as well as external variables in a natural teaching environment, and improved the dependability of data and the interpretability of internal comparisons. As for limitations, the research was significantly influenced by intervention bias. The teachers themselves preferred traditional direct instruction and mentioned in interviews that The flipped classroom was time-consuming and labor-intensive. Such attitudes might have affected the implementation quality and students' experience. Finally, this study emphasizes the importance of designing interactive activities and maintaining strong teacher feedback system in flipped classrooms. This model is difficult to transfer to Chinese secondary mathematics education, as the teacher-student relationship is based on discipline. Nevertheless, it's worth to give it a try. All four studies indicate that the flipped classroom approach can enhance student motivation, engagement, and self-direct learning abilities. Its practical value lies in fulfilling students' psychological needs for competence, autonomy, and relatedness, which drive intrinsic motivation. However, its effectiveness depends on students' self-regulation capabilities and the quality of instruction design. Although these experiments were limited by small sample size and short durations, resulting in general low external validity, they provide strong reference points for diverse groups. Based on these findings, I propose that future teachers implementing flipped classroom should prioritize the following. Here's the references. Thanks for listening.